Hey, Wuthering Waves fans! Today, we're diving into all the 5-star characters in the game. These top-tier units aren't just powerful, they can completely change how you play. Some are absolute damage powerhouses, while others shine with incredible support abilities that keep your team alive. But which ones are worth your time? Let's break down every 5-star character and why you might want to add them to your roster. Whether you're looking for a hard-hitting DPS or the best support to back up your team, we've got you covered. Wuthering Waves is all about unique playstyles, and choosing the right 5-star can be a tough call. Some dominate the battlefield with insane combos, while others protect and heal, turning the tide of battle. So let's jump in and check out what these elite characters have to offer. I'm quickly moving on to the video. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. So, let's talk about Spectro Rover, the starter DPS that everyone begins their Wuthering Waves journey with. They're not bad, not at all. In fact, for beginners, they do their job pretty well. You'll get a solid introduction to the game's mechanics, especially the fort gauge, which is super important as you progress. But let's be real, Spectro Rover isn't here to carry you forever. Once you start pulling 5-star characters, or even some of the stronger 4-stars, you'll quickly notice the difference in raw damage output. That being said, Spectro Rover isn't the worst DPS in the game, and they definitely have their moments. Their kit is straightforward, making them great for players who are still figuring out combat flow. Plus, since they're with you from the start, you're going to get used to their playstyle pretty quickly. But as much as you might get attached, the reality is that they just can't keep up in the long run. Their scaling isn't amazing, and their skills start to feel underwhelming compared to what other units bring to the table. So, should you invest in Spectro Rover? Honestly, only if you have no better options. They're a great training tool, but once you land a proper 5-star DPS, you'll want to move on. If you're lucky enough to get one early, swap out as soon as possible. There are just too many stronger characters with better scaling, stronger abilities, and way more versatility. Spectro Rover teaches you the basics, but once class is over, it's time to graduate to something better. Alright, let's talk about Ling Yang, one of the 5-star characters in Wuthering Waves. Now on paper, he's a solid Glacio DPS with some serious damage potential, but let's be real, he feels slow, like really slow. His whole playstyle revolves around his Resonance Liberation and Forte Gauge, which sounds cool, but when you actually get into combat, you start noticing the clunkiness. His Striding Lion state? Yeah, it looks flashy, but moving between enemies can feel like you're wading through molasses. If your opponents aren't grouped up, you'll be spending a lot of time just getting to them, which isn't exactly ideal when you need to keep up the pressure. That being said, where Ling Yang really shines is in boss fights. Against a single target, he absolutely destroys. His burst damage is no joke, and he's perfect for taking down tanky enemies or farming Overlord echoes. If you enjoy methodical, heavy-hitting gameplay and don't mind the slightly sluggish movement, you'll probably have a great time with him. But if you're looking for a fast-paced DPS that zips around the battlefield, Ling Yang might not be the best fit. He's strong, just not the most fluid to play. So, should you invest in him? Well, if you're mainly focused on boss fights and high-value targets, absolutely. He brings the pain when it matters most. But for general mob clearing or fast-paced fights, there are definitely smoother options out there. At the end of the day, Ling Yang is a specialist. You just have to decide if his strengths align with what you need in Wuthering Waves. Calcharo, the all-rounder DPS that once reigned supreme when Wuthering Waves first dropped. This guy can dish out damage with pretty much any attack he throws, making him super versatile. And when he enters his ultimate state, that's when things get crazy. His burst potential skyrockets, and single-target enemies just don't stand a chance. But, and here's the catch, his AoE damage isn't nearly as impressive. So while he's great for boss fights and elite enemies, he doesn't bring the same level of destruction when dealing with large groups. Now, here's the thing about Calcharo. He was the standard banner king at launch. If you pulled him early on, you were set. But as Wuthering Waves expanded and more powerful DPS characters entered the mix, he started to fall behind. It's not that he's bad, he's just overshadowed. Other characters now bring higher burst, better scaling, or stronger synergies, which means Calcharo's ranking has taken a bit of a hit. He's still solid, just not as dominant as he once was. That being said, if you enjoy his fast-paced playstyle and slick animations, he's still a blast to use. Plus, he doesn't need limited banner characters to shine. He gets the job done with his own kit. If you've built him properly, he can still carry fights, especially in single-target battles. So yeah, he might not be the best DPS anymore, but if you like him, don't let the tier list stop you from having fun. At the end of the day, Wuthering Waves is all about playing who you enjoy, and Calcharo still knows how to put on a show. Jiangxin is one of those characters that tries to do it all, and honestly, that's both her biggest strength and her biggest weakness. She's got tanking, shielding, healing, parrying, and even setting up her own concerto meter all on her plate. Sounds great, right? Well, the problem is that juggling all of these at once means she takes way too long to get things rolling. While other characters can just jump in and go crazy, Jiangxin needs a little too much prep time, which can slow down the flow of combat. That being said, once she gets going, she's a powerhouse in her own way. Her Resonance Liberation can pull in enemies, which is super useful for grouping them up before letting your DPS go wild. And speaking of DPS, her outro is an absolute game changer. A 38% ultimate buff? That's not just good, that's insane. Any strong DPS unit suddenly becomes a nuke waiting to go off, which makes Jiangxin an incredible support when used correctly. So, is Jiangxin worth it? Well, if you're someone who enjoys a more methodical playstyle and doesn't mind the extra setup, she's definitely got a place on your team. But if you prefer fast, aggressive gameplay without much downtime, you might find her a bit frustrating. Either way, there's no denying that when played right, Jiangxin can turn the tide of battle and make your main DPS hit like a truck. Alright, let's talk about Havoc Rover, one of the most explosive damage dealers in Wuthering Waves. But with one little catch, they don't have a dedicated support to back them up. Now don't get me wrong, Havoc Rover absolutely shreds. Whether you're spamming their basic attack or unleashing their Resonance Liberation, the damage is there. The problem? You've got to get a little creative when it comes to boosting their potential, because there's no one tailor-made to supercharge their kit. So, what's the move? If you're all about maximizing those basic attacks, Sun Hua is your best bet. Her buffs will push your damage numbers even higher. But if you're more focused on dishing out massive ultimates, then Jiangxin is the way to go. And sure, you could throw in Danjin for that sweet 23% Havoc DMG buff, but that means you're sacrificing a top-tier DPS just to make Rover stronger. It's a trade-off, and depending on your playstyle, it might not be worth it. At the end of the day, Havoc Rover is still an absolute powerhouse, even without a dedicated support. If you're willing to experiment a little with team comps and tweak your build, you can make them shine in any fight. But if you're looking for a plug-and-play setup with perfect synergy, well, you might have to wait until Wuthering Waves drops a proper support that really makes them pop. Alright, let's talk about Encore, one of the absolute best 5-star characters in Wuthering Waves. If you want someone who can actually get the job done, she's the one to pick. She's got the perfect mix of ranged and melee attacks, making her super versatile in any fight. What really sets her apart is how smoothly she can cancel her heavy attack and echo skill to switch to other characters, which makes team rotations feel buttery smooth. Seriously, once you get the hang of her playstyle, she just flows. Now, let's talk about what makes her so insane, her Resonance Liberation. The moment she enters her melee stance, she becomes an absolute wrecking machine. No interruptions, no nonsense, just pure, relentless damage. This is where she really shines, and if you build her right, she'll tear through enemies like it's nothing. The best part? She's not just strong, she's fun. Her playstyle is fast, aggressive, and constantly engaging, which is exactly what you want from a top-tier character. Encore isn't just about damage, though. She's also one of the best characters when it comes to team synergy. She's built for quick switches, letting you pull off crazy combos without losing momentum. Whether you're an experienced player or just getting started, she's the kind of unit that makes the game feel way more satisfying to play. So if you manage to pull her, congrats. You just got one of the best 5 stars in Wuthering Waves. Yinlin is the definition of a powerhouse off-field DPS. She brings some seriously strong AoE damage to the table, and her buffs to Liberation DMG and Electro DMG make her an amazing support for characters like Xiangli Yao. If you need someone to dish out consistent damage while staying off-field, she's got you covered. But here's the catch. While she's strong, her team compositions don't quite reach the same level as the meta-defining Jinxi and Zheji combo, That means she doesn't quite crack the absolute top tier, even though she's still a fantastic unit. Now, let's talk weapons. Yinlin with her signature weapon, String Master, is an absolute beast. Her damage skyrockets, and she feels like a true prime sub DPS. But take that weapon away and things start to look a little rough. Without String Master, her performance drops noticeably, which makes her a tricky choice for free-to-play players. If you can't get her BS weapon, you might find her a bit underwhelming compared to other 5-stars who don't rely as heavily on their gear. That being said, if you do invest in Yinlin properly, she's an incredibly fun and rewarding character to play. Her abilities feel flashy, her damage output is solid, and she adds a lot of versatility to Electro-based teams. She might not be the go-to pick for absolutely every situation, but in the right hands, and with the right weapon, she can definitely shine. If you're a fan of strong, stylish, off-field DPS units, she's definitely worth considering. Alright, let's talk about Changli, the Phoenix Lady herself. If you're looking for a character that's both stylish and powerful, she's got you covered. But let's be real, mastering her isn't exactly a walk in the park. Her playstyle involves some fancy rotations and canceling techniques, so you'll need to put in the effort. That being said, if you do take the time to learn her mechanics, she becomes an absolute beast on the battlefield. As Jinxi's mentor, she's a force to be reckoned with, pulling off both main DPS and sub-DPS roles with ease. That versatility makes her a must-have for players who love switching up their team dynamics on the fly. Now, let's talk about what makes her shine. Changli's outro skill is where things get really interesting. It boosts both Fusion DMG and Liberation DMG. That means she's the perfect partner for someone like Encore, who thrives on those exact damage types. And if you're running a quick swap team, oh, she fits right in. Sub-DPS characters who don't need much field time, like Yinlin, work seamlessly with her. You can cycle through abilities, trigger powerful effects, and keep the damage flowing non-stop. It's that kind of synergy that makes Changli such a valuable unit in high-level play. So, should you pull for Changli? If you enjoy technical, high-reward characters, then absolutely. She's not the easiest to master, but she's one of the most satisfying to play once you get the hang of her. Whether you need a hard-hitting main DPS or a flexible sub-DPS, she delivers on both fronts. Plus, let's be honest, who wouldn't want to wield the power of the Phoenix Lady herself? When it comes to Wuthering Waves' 5-star characters, we have to talk about the clear power gap between two seemingly similar picks, Calcharo and Xiangli Yao. While both are somewhat free to obtain in the game, it's hard not to notice that Xiangli Yao outshines Calcharo in almost every way. Calcharo's rotations are tough to master, and those interruptions can throw off even the most seasoned players. You know the drill. If you're not spot on with his timing, you're in for a bumpy ride. On the other hand, Xiangli Yao offers a much smoother experience. His abilities are much more forgiving, which makes him an easier choice for anyone looking to focus on raw damage without worrying too much about perfect execution. But here's where it gets interesting. Xiangli Yao isn't just about being easy to play. When you pair him with top-tier characters like Yinlin, the synergy is off the charts. Yinlin's insane Liberation plus Electro DMG buff turns Xiangli Yao into an absolute powerhouse, giving him the edge over many other DPS characters in the game. It's almost like you've unlocked a whole new level of potential. And that's not all. Add another buffer to the mix, say Verena, and now you've got yourself a combo that can melt enemies faster than you can blink. The damage output is just ridiculous. So, while Calcharo might still have his place in specific teams, it's clear that Xiangli Yao is the more versatile and user-friendly option. His ease of use combined with the massive buffs from characters like Yinlin and Verena makes him a must-have if you want to dominate in Wuthering Waves. It's all about that smooth, seamless gameplay, and with Xiangli Yao, you're not just surviving, you're thriving. Alright, let's talk about Zheji and why she's one of the most solid off-field DPS characters in Wuthering Waves. First things first, Zheji is all about those basic attacks. What does that mean for you? It means building her is super simple because all her damage scales off basic attack DMG. No need for complicated setups or thinking too much about different stats, you just focus on making her hit harder and harder and she'll do the rest. Whether you're gearing up for a quick fight or building a long-term strategy, Zheji keeps things straightforward. But here's where it gets even better. Zheji is incredibly easy to use, and I'm not exaggerating when I say she can be swapped in and out of battle like it's nothing. You don't need to babysit her, and that's a huge plus in hectic fights where timing and positioning are everything. Just drop her in, let her do her thing, and then pull her back when needed. You get all the damage without the stress. This makes her a fantastic choice for players who want to keep things smooth without overthinking every move. Finally, let's talk buffs. Zheji doesn't just deal a ton of damage, she also boosts your team. She's got buffs that benefit not only Glacio characters but pretty much anyone on your team. Plus, her ability to generate resonance energy makes her a solid team player, helping your other characters charge up faster. Whether you're focusing on raw damage or building a team with excellent synergy, Zheji plays both roles beautifully. She's a damage dealer, a buffer, and an all-around asset you can't go wrong with. Let's talk about Jian, one of the top-tier DPS characters in Wuthering Waves. This guy knows how to make an impact, and what really sets him apart is how smooth and effortless his playstyle feels. You can rotate through his attacks with ease, and once you're ready to unleash his ultimate, you'll see the real devastation. Jian isn't just about raw damage, it's about how well he delivers that damage, effortlessly clearing out enemies while making it look like a walk in the park. But what really makes Jian stand out, aside from his stellar DPS, is his Resonance Liberation. When you activate it, Jian goes into full Havoc mode, swinging enemies around him and grouping them up in one spot. This makes him not only a beast at dealing damage, but also a strategic force on the battlefield. You can really take advantage of this ability by setting up those perfect combos, ensuring that your enemies are all clustered together and taking maximum damage. It's a pretty satisfying sight to see them all gathered up and ready to be wiped out. And let's not forget about synergy. Jian's playstyle pairs perfectly with Mortefi, one of the best sub-DPS characters in Wuthering Waves. Since Jian's attacks during his Resonance Liberation are considered heavy ATKs, Mortefi can shine alongside him, dealing even more damage in those crucial moments. If you're looking for an ideal duo to wreak havoc across the battlefield, Jian and Mortefi are the perfect pair to get the job done. Together, they turn any fight into a total domination fest. Alright, let's talk about one of the most valuable characters in Wuthering Waves, Verina. If you're playing in a game where you need multiple teams and finding healers or supports is a challenge, then Verina is a game changer. She brings one of the highest heals in the game, and her ability to provide significant buffs is a huge bonus. Seriously, she's the kind of character you want on your side when you're dealing with tough battles. Verina doesn't just keep your team alive, but she makes everyone stronger, which is a big deal in a game like this. Now, I know that sometimes it feels like you're stuck with a team that's missing the support it needs. That's where Verina comes in. Not only does she fill that gap, but she does it in style. She's got one of the highest heals in the game, and her buffs are second to none. When you're out there trying to manage multiple teams, having her on your roster is like having a reliable anchor that lets you focus on other things without constantly worrying about keeping your squad alive. So, if you're planning your team composition and you don't have Verina, you're really missing out. Whether you're running solo or making those multi-team decisions, she's the character that makes everything smoother. Don't leave home without her, especially if you want your team to stay strong, heal up, and get those international buffs to keep pushing forward. In a game like Wuthering Waves, characters like Verina are exactly the kind of power moves you need to make. Alright, let's dive into two of the most beloved healers and buffers in Wuthering Waves, Shorekeeper and the fancier Verina. Now, these two are actually pretty similar in a lot of ways. Both are fantastic support characters that can fit seamlessly into any team composition. Whether you're tackling tough bosses or just trying to survive the grind, these two bring solid healing and buffs to the table. The real difference, though, comes down to their playstyle and rotations. Verina is all about those quick, easy rotations. Her skill set is smooth and straightforward. On the other hand, Shorekeeper requires a bit more attention. She has a fixed rotation that you need to follow to get the best results, but if you nail it, the rewards are worth it. Now, Shorekeeper does something that Verina doesn't. She buffs crit rate and crit damage. That's huge. So if you're running a team that needs a bit more oomph in the damage department, Shorekeeper's got your back. She's all about those high numbers, and when you compare her to characters like the Botanist, she absolutely outshines them in terms of damage output. But let's not sugarcoat it. Shorekeeper does have some downsides. She lacks coordinated attack, which means she doesn't quite synergize with some other characters as well as Verina might. And if you want to get her to perform at her best, you're going to need to focus on energy regen. Without that, she'll struggle to keep her skills running. So, in the end, which one's better? Well, it really depends on what you're looking for. If you're into a smooth, effortless rotation and want someone who can buff and heal in a flash, Verina's your gal. But if you're willing to put in a little extra effort with rotations and need someone who can boost crit rate and crit DMG to push those damage numbers higher, then Shorekeeper is absolutely worth it. Both are amazing in their own right, and honestly, having either in your team is a great choice. Just know what you're getting into with their different playstyles. So, let's talk about Camellia, one of the absolute powerhouse DPS characters in Wuthering Waves. Now, don't get me wrong, her damage might not top Jinxi's, but where she really shines is in her AoE. She can deal way more area damage than the Magistrate of Jinzhou, making her a fantastic option for clearing out multiple enemies at once. Her kit is super simple, which is a huge plus for players who want to focus more on strategy than worrying about complicated combos. What makes Camellia so fun to play is how straightforward her playstyle is. All you have to do is use her skill and then just spin around, dealing damage to everything in your path. You don't even need to build up her ultimate, like with characters such as Jian. That means you can focus on dishing out AoE damage consistently without any extra hassle. She also works incredibly well with a variety of other characters like Verena, Shorekeeper, and Sanhua, creating a synergy that can make team compositions a breeze to manage. The best part? She's a true team player. You don't have to babysit her ultimate or do anything complicated, just let her spin, use her skills, and watch as she effortlessly clears the battlefield. It's so satisfying to see the enemies fall one by one, especially when she's paired with the right characters. If you haven't tried Camellia yet, I definitely recommend giving her a spin. Pun intended. Jinxi is one of the absolute powerhouses when it comes to burst DPS in Wuthering Waves. Seriously, her damage potential can reach insane levels with the right buffs, and the best part is, her rotation is really easy to get the hang of. Once you understand the rhythm, she can melt enemies in no time. She's all about that quick, explosive damage, and when she's in her element, you'll see her perform like no other. However, there's a catch. Jinxi's airborne state, while awesome for dodging a lot of incoming attacks, can also make repositioning a bit tricky. You might find yourself stuck in one spot trying to figure out where to move next while her damage is still cranking out. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, and it takes a little getting used to. Still, if you can manage that, she becomes a force to be reckoned with. To really make Jinxi shine, you'll want to pair her up with coordinated attackers like Jeji, Yinlin, and Verena. They help her stack her incandescence faster, which is key to unlocking her full potential. When you have that synergy, she becomes even deadlier, and her burst damage just goes through the roof. So, if you're looking to add a ton of firepower to your squad, Jinxi's definitely a character you want to get to know better. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.